Until that moment, my experiences had been filled with curious, strange, amusing, and deeply interesting situations. But what I experienced in the City of Stars gave the word interesting a whole new meaning. After quickly achieving the usual separation from my body with my practiced routine, I decided once again to head toward the stars. Since I wasn't entirely sure where I wanted to go, I thought the best approach was to fly as high as possible and see how far I could get. Once, out of my body, I passed through the window of my room, and when I reached the backyard, I looked up at the sky and began to fly. The night was dark and filled with stars. As I ascended rapidly toward the heavens, I watched in awe as the stars began to move and cluster together at an incredible speed. They grouped in such a way that they formed the clear layout of a city, as if the stars were streetlights illuminating the roads. Within seconds, the stars before my eyes had formed a clearly distinguishable city layout, as though I were viewing it from an airplane. I continued flying toward this city, and in an instant, my perception of space shifted. Initially, I had been flying upward toward the stars, but as I approached the city, now just a few hundred meters away, I felt like I was flying in the opposite direction, from the sky toward the ground. Finally, I landed on one of the streets. I looked around and realized I was indeed standing in a real city, with a skyline filled with tall illuminated towers, paved streets, advertisement signs, and people bustling everywhere. A proper city in every sense of the word. Once there, I began walking to my right along wide, well-lit sidewalks, surrounded by people of all kinds. The buildings had large glass facades with spacious, brightly lit interiors. Oddly, I didn't feel compelled to enter any of these buildings. For some reason, they didn't catch my attention. I crossed one of the streets and entered what looked like a plaza with a rectangular building several stories high, similar to a hotel or an apartment block. The plaza was adorned with flower beds and plants. The ground was smooth and pale grey. The building featured metallic awnings around its perimeter, forming a kind of walkway that seemed accessible. As I approached what I assumed was the building's main entrance, something bizarre happened, a completely surreal event. Suddenly, I was surrounded by several men dressed in immaculate white shirts and trousers. These men carried wooden staffs, which they held defensively. At that moment, I couldn't understand what on earth was happening, or why these men were surrounding me with those sticks. They started shouting in a strange language I couldn't understand. Then, out of nowhere, several lions, yes, lions, came charging furiously toward me, roaring deafeningly and with clear intentions to attack. The situation caught me completely off guard. I felt utterly defenseless as these massive felines, jaws hungry for flesh, so to speak, charged toward me. I was consumed by fear. A suffocating terror paralyzed me, and I had no idea what to do. The first lion struck me head-on. All I could do was raise my arms to shield myself. Instantly, I felt its powerful bite. Not pain exactly, but an overwhelming force and pressure. Perhaps that's what pain feels like in that other reality. The second lion attacked my left side, and the third pounced on me from behind. I started shaking frantically as these enraged beasts bit and clawed at me relentlessly. The men with the staffs kept shouting furiously, waving their weapons up and down. At one point, I managed to free my right arm from the jaws of the first lion. I started hitting it repeatedly, punching and kicking with newfound ferocity. Eventually, I broke free. In a moment of clarity, I instinctively thought about flying. I clumsily lifted off the ground, but one of the lions leapt impressively and sank its teeth into my right hamstring. It nearly pulled me back down, but I delivered a well-aimed, powerful blow to its snout. It released me, and I soared upward, landing on the metallic awning surrounding the building. Looking down, I saw the frenzied spectacle of men and beasts still pursuing me from below. Just as I thought I was safe, two men with staffs, accompanied by two lions, appeared on either side of the awning, cutting off my escape. With no other choice, I flew upward again as they charged at me. I jumped, taking flight and putting a safe distance between myself and the chaos below. Once free from the relentless battle, I decided to enter the building through one of its windows. What I was about to see inside would leave me speechless. At the time of this experience, both of my maternal grandparents had already passed away. My grandfather had left this world 5 years earlier, and my grandmother just a few months before this event. Until that moment, I hadn't been able to meet them in the expanded reality, but as I entered that room, there they were. When they saw me, it took all three of us a few seconds to realize what we were seeing. It was evident their surprise at my presence was even greater than mine. Immediately, we burst into laughter and embraced each other. It felt as if the fight with those furious lions had taken place decades ago. My sense of time was completely distorted, and my joy at seeing them was unparalleled. Both looked exactly as they had when they left the physical world. They asked what I was doing there. I admitted I didn't know. I had arrived there randomly. My grandmother, who had known about my experiences while alive, was aware of my abilities, yet I suspect she hadn't expected to see me in that place. For my grandfather, however, the surprise was absolute. I asked how they were doing. Smiling broadly, they told me they were happy and well cared for in that place. I didn't ask them what the place was exactly. They asked how I was, and I gave them a brief summary of life on Earth. Then we shared another warm embrace, and I told them I loved them. At that moment, I instinctively knew it was time to return. I floated out through the same window and returned outside. The men and their lions were gone. I ascended toward the sky, and as I gained speed, I felt a strong pull at the back of my neck. Instantly, I opened my eyes in my physical body. Sitting up, I tried to process the entire experience. It had been overwhelmingly profound, full of wild and bizarre situations, with the final reunion with my grandparents as the cherry on top. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: adrenaline, laughter, fear, and ultimately joy. Gradually I calmed down and questions began to arise. What was that place? Why were there lions? Why did they attack me so violently? Who were they protecting? What exactly was that place, and what was its purpose? Who were those men? Why were my grandparents there? At that moment I regretted not spending more time with my grandparents to ask them all those questions. Perhaps they had the answers, or perhaps they didn't. Still, I recalled the moment after our final embrace when I instinctively knew I had to return. I didn't know how or why, but I simply knew I had to leave. And so I did. To this day, just like the park and the moon, I haven't returned to the city of stars. Perhaps in future experiences I will go back there and find the answers I still seek. Sooner or later, I'm certain I will.